Hello. If you are returning from my previous video, welcome back. If you are new here, I am Alexander Miletus. If you've seen my previous video, this video will be in a slightly different format to the last one. This is the first episode of Chats in the Stoa, a podcast-style series. Each episode, I will discuss a few topics which are either of more salient and current events interest, or I will discuss several topics in succession which I do not feel deserve their own video, either because they are small enough or they are densely interconnected. This episode, we will be talking about the elections which are upcoming in both the US and Europe, the use of the term far right and why I find it to be a borderline political slur, and the concept of Newspeak. So without further ado, let us begin. However, before we begin, I must first address a very recent event. Alexei Navalny is dead. A prominent thorn in Putin's side for many years and leader of the Russian opposition, this is not surprising, especially as Russia is due for what could be called sham elections. However, this is still a significant stage in the consolidation of Putin's power. As the political opposition in Russia, as with most politics in Russia, has tended towards an organization around a single leading figure, such as Navalny in the case of the opposition or Putin in the case of the regime, this will deal a significant blow to an already embattled political opposition in Russia. Although I do not believe that this will result in any significant changes, it is still an important event, as Navalny has been a significant figure in Russian politics almost since the beginning of Russian political opposition towards Vladimir Putin. Putin is using this idea of a war against Ukraine to eliminate many of his political adversaries. And I cannot stand this war. It is a war between two nations who are so incredibly similar that they may be considered brothers. As has been said in many circles, no more brother wars. It is my hope that someday the Russo-Ukrainian War will be looked upon as a civil war, one entirely unnecessary, and that Vladimir Putin will be considered the war criminal and monger he is. For despite what many on the right would have to say about him, he is not on our side. He is Russian first, Western second. And that is why I cannot sustain him. Now, for the next event, the elections upcoming in both the EU and the USA. These elections will be, unlike the 2020 elections, incredibly pivotal, as we are witnessing a second front opening in the culture war. The culture war, as I see it, has primarily two aspects to it: the institutional power and general politics among the population. The right has had many successes, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, with regard to the latter, and it is now that those successes are beginning to translate into the former. It is also why many on the left, as we saw in the WEF Forum in Davos this January, have begun promoting even harsher and quicker measures to suppress political activity from dissenters. Because, just like Putin, they cannot abide opposition. Opposition, and indeed any discussion of politics that is not pre-scripted, is toxic to them, for they cannot survive within it. Now, the rightward shift that we are likely to witness and are predicting for both the EU and US elections is not without precedent. As we saw with the coming into power of Greggio Meloni, apologies for the pronunciation, and the Brothers of Italy party, we have additionally witnessed a rightward shift in Sweden and Finland, traditionally some of the most left-leaning countries, especially with regard to the issue of mass immigration. The mass immigration front, too, has seen a tremendous rightward shift in Germany, where the Alternative für Deutschland has been experiencing an enormous growth. And indeed, the same dynamic of the left attempting to use its political power to suppress regular people's politics occurring in full force, as recently in Germany. A customer at a bank was sent a threatening letter over his financial support for the AfD, and calls have been emerging from among the traffic light coalition that is currently administering the country to ban the AfD entirely, despite it continually having substantial election results. Should this idea go through to ban the AfD, all I can hope is that it will be recognized for the movement against democracy and against sanity in politics that it is. Though I do not agree with all of the AfD's tenets, I find it to be a very palatable political party, and very much in line with my views. And I greatly look forward to the rightward shift in the EU, and I wish the ECR and ID groups within the EU Parliament the greatest luck and electoral success. Meanwhile, in the United States, things are looking slightly differently for Trump and Biden. To be frank, at this point, I do not support any major contender. Trump is a political charlatan, little more. He does not have an actual grounding in politics, merely reality television and real estate. And he has proven that he cannot be trusted with even a major business, much less a nuclear-armed state. Biden has proven himself as a left-wing hack. He does not deserve a second term in office, nor will he likely live through one. The immense psychological and physical toll the presidency takes on all who hold its office is immense. And as Jimmy Carter himself admitted, I could not have done this job at 80. Back during the primaries, before the Iowa caucuses, my support primarily went to Vivek Ramaswamy, as I felt him to be the least bad option. Now, I see no one who fits that bill, except perhaps Kennedy Jr., although he has essentially no chances of success at this point, being an independent on the right. And so, I fear that whatever the result of the elections this year, America will chart a downward course. And therefore, I once again extend my greatest support and indeed prayers to the European political right, as they are the only political group that has a chance. Now, going back as to why I believe that such a political shift will occur, it's not hard to see why. After all, continual discussions in the media about a potential right-wing resurgence, or analyses of why the right and the far right has been growing so much. Indeed, even Javier Milei has predicted a similar shift with his own election. Now, the media has been increasingly discussing the concept of a right-wing victory in many different elections. This could be taken as a sign that the left is surrendering. After all, as the brilliant man academic agent put it, the media has to, or rather the regime, has to prime its subjects. And so it is psychologically priming the rank and file on the left, for a right-wing institutional gain. Now, what I expect to see from the left is an increase in populist rhetoric, because populism is not an actual political ideology. The right wing is populist now because it is popular. The left wing will attempt to be populist, although it will not get it very far. And this is truly the genius, you could call it, of Marxism. It appeals to the masses, but not in a way the masses would like. It is a truly strange ideology in that regard, one that claims to know what is best for those it claims to support, and yet, when those it claims to support say that what it wants is not what they want, it refuses to listen to them. Now, another topic that the media has been discussing is the rise of the far right. And this comes to the second point of this video and second topic of discussion, the term far right. The term far right has allegedly simple origins, those who are on the far right wing of the political spectrum. And indeed, it would be useful as a diagnostic term. However, given as little use the one-dimensional political spectrum has in defining any real ideologies, it is a term that is already incredibly vague and borderline meaningless. However, its usage by the left has turned it into less of a meaningless term and into more of a political slur. I want you to think for a moment. How many times have you heard the term far right? And to how many people have you heard it applied? I myself have heard it applied to white supremacists, white nationalists, and yes, there is a difference, libertarians, Christian fundamentalists. I've even seen it applied to, as I think it through now, there are so many people it has been applied to that the term is essentially meaningless. And so the conventional wisdom on the right that far right means enemy of the regime remains true, because far right was begun to associate with the Nazis. And as the Nazis continue to this day to be used as a political boogeyman, which is one of the topics I will discuss in my upcoming video, The Allure of Fascism, the idea of the far right has been used. Because as Nazis and blatant violent white supremacists become less and less common as the Overton window shifts ever further left, the need for the character of the Nazi continues. And so, the term far right is used, as this term is sufficiently general and vague and nearly meaningless. It in effect serves as a political slur. It can be targeted against anyone towards which it might vaguely apply, and it carries nothing but negative connotations. It is for this reason, and additionally the fact that those who would seek to defend the West are considered far right, that we should never use this term for ourselves. If you must, use the term reactionary, as it is a far better idea. However, another, very similar term, I believe can be rehabilitated. The use of the adjective far in the term far right implies an almost going off the deep end. It implies that they are so far beyond the pale of regular political discourse that it is impossible to negotiate with them, that they are fanatical, that they are too far gone. However, there is a very similar term to far right, hard right, and this term could be much more useful. For the term hard right implies a refusal to shake from beliefs, a hard adherence to what you stand for, and it even implies a strength that you will refuse to fall. And this term is much more appropriate because defenders, like defensive walls, they must be strong, they must be unyielding. A defense is success only when it does not break and when it does not give ground. And so, the two best terms, if you agree with me and seek to defend the West, would be hard right and reactionary. The former is preferred, but if you must use the latter. Now, why are we talking about this? Why do we have to discuss political slurs? This is where the third topic I wish to discuss comes in. Newspeak. Newspeak has its origins in George Orwell's classic 1984, a book which only seems to get more terrifying each time you read it. In the book, Newspeak serves as the new language of Ingsoc, English socialism, although in reality a simple justification for totalitarian behavior. Newspeak is, as one of the characters in the book puts it, limiting the range of thought. Its construction is, as this character puts it, not so much a matter of creating new words, but removing ones. The language is designed to make thought crime, the idea of thinking unorthodox thoughts, impossible, or, as Orwell puts it in his appendix to 1984, impossible at least so far as cognition is dependent upon thought. Now, the implications of this are alarming. And indeed, this language bears a passing resemblance to two dialects of at least the English language. One of the characteristics of Ingsoc is that every word is imbued with a very specific ideological meaning. Now, this is not like ancient Greek, wherein most words can signify some sort of philosophical concept, as these concepts are not broad, and they are not meant to enrich thought. They are narrow. An example given is the Ingsoc sentence, "Old thinkers unbelly feel Ingsoc." Now, as Orwell writes, this can roughly be translated to mean those whose political and philosophical beliefs that were formed before the revolution do not truly feel innately the ideas of Ingsoc. However, old think and old thinkers has many implications, many of which are very complex. It not only indicates an idea of being old, but of decadence, of outdatedness, of that which was swept away. And unbelly feel. To belly feel is another concept which has no direct translation. Because yes, it does mean to blindly believe, but it also means to feel, as if feeling an ideology was truly possible. Now you may be wondering why I'm putting so much time into discussing this. And it is for very good reason. If you look at any Marxist or postmodern text, you will find a very similar trick being played. Every word has a careful meaning attached. Every word has a very specific meaning, which it does not have for the rest of us. Even the idea of, say, equality or inequality has a radically different meaning the idea that, the idea of even thinking is given a specific meaning. The idea of looking is given a very specific, narrowly ideologically defined meaning. And this is very similar to Newspeak. Another thing is that old words are given weird twists on their meanings. We too see this in what I could call Marxist speak. After all, the strange thing that occurs is that states can become actions, actions become states. And ultimately what this does is place the reader, and one who thinks in these terms, into an entirely different universe, where reality, true cognition, is impossible to attain. There's an excellent song by the band Rome, known as Kali Yuga über alles, and a line perfectly exemplifies what I am describing here. You are reassembling language to keep realities out. The other aspect of Newspeak, which is relevant today, is the simplification of its grammar. Quickly becomes speedwise, slowness becomes unspeed, and so slowly becomes the very clunky and almost childlike unspeedwise. This has direct comparisons to modern-day English, where we see increasingly a loss in advanced rhetoric and discussion, where it is witnessed that even politicians, those who should ideally have the most rhetorical training and the most power and vigor behind their words, almost speak in casual conversation to the nation. We also witness even philosophical books becoming, if not more arcane, and simpler. Even everyday speech becomes dumbed down in a way. Now, this can in part be associated with mass immigration, second language learners simplifying the language to meet their needs. But it can also be taken as a sign of educational and cultural degeneracy. We are not taught the beauty of language in our schools. Indeed, the beauty of language is actively suppressed. I remember in English class, just recently, trying to get through Shakespeare, which, although beautiful, is dense, and few attempts are made to translate his language, even though I feel that at this stage, a translation could be very relevant. And I am working through these densely knit paragraphs, which even I, with a verbal IQ labeled off the charts, am having to reread multiple times. And then I compare to something I'm reading on the side, a translation of the Kalevala, the national epic of Finland. And I compare the clear and beautiful lucidity of the translated language, which does not lose an ounce of complexity. And I think, why are works like this not taught in school? Now, I understand that Shakespeare is important, and he should be taught and read. But I think exclusively teaching him, and otherwise only teaching the works of more modern authors, serves a purpose that is ulterior in its nature. The goal is to present more complex language as hard to get through and almost ugly, incomprehensible even. However, this is not the case. And so, when we combine these two features, specifically giving a unique and ideological meaning to each word, and giving a word a simple, clear meaning and a simple, basic grammar, we find Newspeak. And make no mistake, this is what the elites want. For, as Orwell writes, in Newspeak, the statement, all men are created equal, would have as much meaning as saying all men are 5'10", or all men are redheads. And that is really what the left wants. You see it mentioned in the way they speak about class consciousness or the male gaze. Because while right-wing politics seeks first and foremost to alter the state towards beneficent ends, the left-wing ideology seeks to alter the mind. And that is why many are increasingly turning to the right. Becoming a member of the left requires retraining your speech, retraining your mind to service an ideology. While becoming a member of the right simply requires that you accept its tenets. And even those may be discussed and, dare I say, quibbled over. And so this is what we will witness for the rest of 2024. An exhaustion with Newspeak and the hard right re-emerging to take back control over institutions. This journey has begun this year, but it will take several years. After all, the same left that proclaimed a long march through the institutions will now have to attempt to fend one off. For that is the direction of which we are heading. If we can acquire political gains, we will, granted for a period, have to fight against all other institutions, but I feel that we will come out the victor. As I said in my previous video, we are in the right, and evil can only delay a right end for so long. So, my advice: get into institutions, and if you are in institutions, start speaking your mind. Because the more sway we have over them, the more people we have in there, the better off we and all of society will be. And I don't mean this in a Machiavellian sense. I mean, steer institutions wherein you have power towards the right, in both the political and the moral sense. If you are in an art gallery and you have power over what works are selected, choose works of beauty and that express the true ideals of the West. If you are in any form of local government, refuse to sanction or simply resist attempts at inducing left-wing ideology. It can be as simple as refusing to put a pride flag on your door. Every piece of resistance within the institutions aids us, and our children will be grateful for even the smallest actions that we take for them. I'm Alexander Miletus, and I will see you next time.